Hey, coming up next, streaming services surpass cable in viewership as the NFL moves Thursday Night Football exclusively to Amazon Prime.
Discussing the news affecting your money. The WBBM Noon Business Hour continues.
The NFL's Thursday night games will run exclusively on streaming service Amazon Prime as the latest numbers on viewership reflect the decline of cable. Let's talk about that and also a streaming snafu that impacted some users last night with Tim Hanlon, founder and CEO of the Vertere Group based in Chicago. Tim, thanks for joining us today. These are the numbers. 34.8% of total U.S. viewing during the month of July went to streaming services, Netflix, Apple TV Plus, and so on and so forth. And cable TV attracted 34.4. We know who's watching streaming, and it's the growing segment of the video audience. What are the big? What's driving people to cable these days?
Yeah, well, Rob, streaming is accelerating, and it's already, per that data from Nielsen, as you just mentioned, is essentially now the first choice behavior for quote unquote watching television. With some squinting of numbers, it's actually probably a bit higher than that. And then when you add in, when you compare that against broadcast television and cable, it's still a bit behind when you combine those traditional manners. But those two, broadcast and cable, are declining in viewing. So there's no question that the mainstreaming, if you will, of streaming television is well underway and is probably going to be even higher levels as, for example, as you mentioned, things like NFL football and various high-profile sporting events migrate not only to being included in streaming as a choice, but even exclusively in streaming. And that's clearly going to draw even more viewers in.
And so the question is, as we talk about the future of streaming, how do we get these last holdouts from broadcasting and cable over into the streaming arena? Because there are some things for which broadcast television, is still the place to be. I mean, the NFL, you've said this before, is what keeps the broadcasters in business. And a lot of local content on local TV channels definitely draws eyeballs to local broadcast television. How far away are we from migrating those brands over from broadcasting into streaming? And also, the future of streaming, is it going to be entirely portable video, or can audio come along on the journey?
Oh, there's no question that audio can come along for the journey. I think the reality is that there is a belief that broadcast television is a massively scaled platform, and that streaming still is kind of, by comparison, somewhat of a niche kind of environment. But the reality is, as you just pointed out with the data, the aggregate viewing behavior is now clearly moving towards streaming. So it's really now up to broadcast television to itself move into streaming to allow streaming first behaviors to be satisfied, and that includes things like local television news and your local television stations being much more widely available in streaming formats. Again, it's streaming first. It's the behavior that younger audiences are used to and expectant of, and it's not necessarily turning on the television set to watch something on quote-unquote broadcast television. Most people under the age of 40 or even 50 don't even understand what that means anymore.
30 or 40 years ago, the networks would start in the fall around this time with the big splashy ad campaigns that wanted brand loyalty from you from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to bed. So if the NBC wanted you to wake up at the Today Show and say good night with Johnny Carson and watch game shows in their primetime lineup from start to finish. The streamers, though, don't seem to have that level of brand loyalty, that people do juggle their subscriptions based on the shows they like, shows that have been canceled, whether or not they think they could juggle 3 or 4 of them and want to slim down to 2 or 3. How do they build that level of brand loyalty that, yes, we're an Apple TV Plus house and we love it?
Yeah, I think it's very, very hard, Rob, and it's an excellent observation. Look, I mean, what you described in the old days was sort of a network branding philosophy. The reality is that a network in television, a network in cable means much, much less and it's really driven by a show or a series or perhaps an exclusivity window for a particular sporting event like NFL or something like that. So in essence, I think what consumers really are now going to be doing is literally dancing between services pretty savvily, subscribing and unsubscribing, as they follow their shows and series that they're really interested in. I'm not so sure that there's really much brand loyalty to streaming services or, basically the modern versions of what a network is. It's about programming, and they're going to find it and want to find it wherever they could get it.
As long as it works, as HBO Max users discovered last night when House of the Dragon crashed the service. Tim Hanlon, founder and CEO of the Vertere Group based in Chicago, thanks for joining us.